3 spine-chilling true stories of the cursed dead of night. Unexplained horrors exposed. In the quiet suburb of Maplewood, the nights are supposed to be peaceful. But when her husband Scott starts his night shift at the local power plant, Sarah's world begins to crumble. Even shadows seem to move differently, whispering secrets that tease her fraying mind. In the corners of her eyes, figures flit just out of sight. Chills crawl down her spine as she rocks her restless 2-year-old son Sam in her arms while her daughter Lily sleeps fitfully, haunted by nightmares. It's just fatigue, she reassures herself, though she can't shake the feeling that something is very wrong. The first eerie whisper floats in the night on the wind, a voice, faint but chilling. Sarah. It sends a shudder through her as she clutches her children tighter. From that moment, shadows dance, and the walls seem to breathe, heavy with secrets. Rumors swirl through Maplewood, tales of a woman who vanished near the power plant, never to be seen again. Sarah tries to ignore the knot of dread tightening in her stomach as she hears about flickering lights and a community that once felt like home growing suffocatingly sinister. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Day by day, suspicion seeps into her friendships, particularly with her neighbor Alice, who seems all too eager to share tales of the curse. Each night, Sarah's heart races faster, paranoia seeps in, pulling her deeper into the murky abyss of fear. The air grows heavier, thick with an impending threat as phone calls ring through her home, the same unnatural whisper echoing, sending shadows creeping across her walls. She feels eyes on her, invisible yet consuming, gnawing at her very essence. As darkness falls, Sarah decides to take control. Driven by primal instinct, she delves into the mystery around the missing woman. What she uncovers makes her knees buckle, connections hidden in plain sight, secrets buried beneath Maplewood's pristine surface. The comfortable facade of her community starts cracking, and it is in those cracks that pure terror seeps through. Alice's smirk haunts her, the glint in her eyes twisting as reality unfurls. On a particularly quiet night, when the weight of silence hangs most heavy, another phone call cuts through the stillness. "They're coming for you." A voice, achingly familiar, yet utterly grotesque. Her blood turns to ice, ripping through the soft safety of her mind. Panic swells, she races to check on her children, heart pounding like a drum. As the day transitions into night, she fights against despair, fearing the curse may already have a grip on her, trailing her like an unwanted shadow. Just as she prepares for one final confrontation in the suffocating dark, the lights flicker, plunging her into an abyss of terror. When they return, a message scrawled in blood-red letters across her walls demands her attention, a throbbing pulse of dread reverberating through her. "They're coming for you." Sarah's breath hitches. She stands on the edge of a terrifying revelation. Something far more sinister may be lurking not just in the shadows, but in the heart of her once beloved community. The night pressed down on Sarah like a heavy shroud. Dim light flickered helplessly across the room, illuminating the message that clawed at her sanity. "They're coming for you." The words pulsed in her mind, echoing like a haunting chant. The walls felt like they were closing in, suffocating her, taunting her with their silent secrets. She knew she needed to act, but each second bled into the next, thick with impending dread. Her son Sam shifted restlessly in her arms, tiny hands curling and uncurling in sleep. Beside her, Lily tossed in her bed, trapped in nightmares of intangible horrors. Fear gripped Sarah, the children were her priority. She glanced at the clock. Midnight. The witching hour. Time felt warped, stretched like taffy, as if the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting for something terrible to unfold. The phone rang again, slicing through the heavy silence. She hesitated, but the whispers of an unseen presence pushed her to answer. Trembling, she picked it up, her heart pounding. "Hello." Static hissed, then that same grotesque voice from before crawled into her ear. You can't hide forever, Sarah. Come find me at the power plant. Then silence. Just cold, unforgiving silence. Her pulse raced as she set the phone down, a mixture of terror and confusion flooding her senses. How could she possibly confront whatever awaited her? What lay behind the veil of Maplewood's charms? Each crack in the quaint community whispered stories too dark to bear. Taking a deep breath, she realized the only way to uncover the truth was to confront it directly. She had to go to the power plant, though a primal instinct screamed against it. Shadows danced mockingly, shifting in the corners of her vision, but she gathered her strength. Her children needed her to be brave. She kissed their foreheads softly and whispered a promise, I'll be right back. Under the darkened sky, she drove to the power plant, her heartbeat steadying as adrenaline coursed through her veins. The structure loomed ahead, a monstrous figure against the night, exhaling foul air from its smokestacks, a grotesque heart beating in the darkness. Each step toward the entrance felt heavier, yet she pressed on, her fear morphing into determination. Inside, the apparatuses hummed and clicked, a symphony of unnatural sounds wrapping around her like a clammy embrace. She moved deeper, guided only by instinct and sheer desperation. The air grew colder, suffocating her resolve, each breath becoming a battle. Whispers flitted around her, words sliding between the machines, teasing and taunting her with uncertainty. Sarah, the voice echoed in the air, familiar yet twisted. Her skin crawled. You must understand. A sudden crash startled her, and she turned, heart racing. The shadows seemed to pulse with life. Who is there? She called out, her voice trembling. Silence answered, pregnant with threats. Panic threatened to consume her as she stumbled across something unnatural, a collection of photographs pinned to a decaying wall, a mini shrine of faces once vibrant, now reduced to fading memories. One photograph made her throat close up, the woman from the stories, the one who vanished. The image blurred, along with everything else, as realization hit her like ice water. The curse wasn't just a tale. It was a reality, and it was hungry. Behind her, footsteps echoed, heavy and deliberate. Her breath quickened. She turned slowly, the shadows morphing and slithering closer. Sarah, the voice came again, and the chill that washed over her was one of recognition, mingling with horror. She felt the darkness envelop her, tugging at her bones. Who are you? She screamed into the void, the suffocating bleakness wrapping around her like a noose. Only silence responded, thick and ominous. As she backed away, she understood they weren't only coming for her. They had already taken her into their fold, and the true nightmare was about to begin. A low, haunting laugh echoed through the chamber, wrapping around her like a serpent. You can't escape the curse, Sarah, with panic pulsating through her veins. She spun around, desperation overtaking reason. What awaited her within those shadows would push her beyond the brink. Then a new voice rang out, sharp and clear. Help, Mommy. It was Sam. The fear that shot through her was paralyzing. The shadows were closing in around her, a suffocating net preparing to trap her forever. Could she save her children before it was too late? As the darkness surged forward, she knew she was running out of time. Her heart raced as she sprinted toward the exit, with every instinct in her screaming that horror was just beginning to reveal itself. What awaited outside? The air felt like ice as Sarah fled through the labyrinth of the power plant, her heart pounding like a war drum in her ears. She propelled herself forward, nearly slipping on the cold, dusty floor. Each breath was a desperate gasp, each fleeting shadow a potential threat. Sam, she cried, voice cracking as she strained to hear any sign of him amidst the overwhelming silence. No. The sinister laughter from behind echoed, a cruel reminder that the curse was alive and pressing closer with every step. The unseen entity was toying with her, relishing her growing fear. Mommy! Came Sam's voice again, a piercing cry that sent her racing back through the corridors, determined to reach him, but were the whispers leading her closer or further from her son? The flickering lights overhead cast eerie shadows, transforming the mechanical giants into monstrous figures. The place was a graveyard of rust and decay, and each creak of the building seemed to pulse with menace. The photos on the wall flashed before her mind, their faces twisted in the grip of the unknown. What had happened to them? The same could easily happen to her. She skidded to a stop outside of a large room, the door half ajar. Sam's voice was louder now, desperation lacing every syllable. Her stomach sank as she hesitated, a primal instinct telling her to turn back. Stay away from the darkness. Instead, she pushed open the door with a creak, the sound reverberating like a death knell. Inside, the smell of burnt rubber and dilapidation assaulted her senses. It took a moment for her eyes to adjust, but when they did, dread coiled around her throat. The stark glow from a broken fluorescent tube flickered sporadically, illuminating a room filled with abandoned machinery, the ghosts of a functioning power plant. And there, in the center of it all, stood Sam. Alone, small, and clutching a rusty metal toy, his eyes wide with fear. But he was not alone. Surrounding him were shadowy figures, indistinct and shrouded, waiting, watching. Sam! Run! Panic clawed at her as she rushed toward him, the hairs on her neck standing on end as a chill swept through the air. But before she could reach him, a force threw her back, slamming her into the wall. Stars exploded in her vision, pain radiating while the shadows closed in. Let him go! She shrieked, scrambling to her feet once more. They swayed like tall grass, whispering secrets she could not comprehend. They were drawn to her, hungry and insatiable. They craved her fear. Sarah, it wasn't just the shadows speaking now, it was the familiar voice, the one twisted and tormented. It was the same voice echoing through her memories, the woman from the photographs. You're part of this now. You cannot undo what has been done. No. She screamed, gripping the fabric of reality like a lifeline. Sam's eyes met hers, shimmering with confusion and terror. She couldn't lose him, not to this nightmare that threatened to consume them. In that moment, the shadows surged forth, a whirlpool of darkness descending upon them like an avalanche of despair. Sarah's breath quickened, adrenaline flooding her limbs. She had to act fast, a way to break their hold. Her mind raced, there had to be something she could use. She couldn't let them take her child. Stay back! She shouted, searching frantically for anything to defend herself. A wrench lay discarded on the ground. She grabbed it, feeling the weight of it in her hands, an odd sense of resolve igniting within her. Mommy! Sam wailed, the sound echoing with a heartbreaking ferocity. Hold on, Sam! With a surge of desperation, she lunged forward, swinging the wrench with all her strength. The clang of metal striking shadow sent ripples through the darkness, making the figures recoil. Maybe she could reach him. But as they staggered back, a deep, guttural roar erupted from the shadows, piercing the air, sending fatigue coursing through her veins. The room shifted, the walls warping and pulsating. Sarah stumbled, struggling to maintain her balance, clinging to the hope that Sam was still within reach. As the shadows momentarily faltered, she bolted toward him, her heart racing with newfound hope. But the silhouettes regrouped, narrowing their icy gaze back at her. She was out of time. Sarah, the voice hissed, and dread clamped down like a vice. You can't fight what's already yours. Then the room began to spin, the darkness rolling in, wrapping around her, stealing her light. No! Sam! She cried as the shadows swallowed her whole, the wrench slipping from her fingers, clattering to the ground. As darkness encircled her, she knew one stark truth: she was losing the fight, but she would not give up her son without a battle. Yet as her consciousness faded, a new sound emerged, a flurry of frantic whispers tightening around her like chains. Help! What had she awakened, and would she ever escape? Sarah gasped, the air thickening around her like fog. The whispers intensified, swirling in her ears, their urgency rising to a shriek. She clawed at the darkness, fighting against an invisible current that pulled her deeper into its abyss. Help! It was Sam's voice, distant but clear. It ignited a flicker of strength within her. No. She wouldn't let them take him. Not now. The shadows writhed like serpents, reaching for her, eager to sink their fangs into her soul. She summoned all of her will, forcing her limbs to move against the crushing weight of despair. This was her son. She would fight. She must fight. Sam! I'm coming! Sarah screamed, though doubt crept into her heart. Would she reach him before the Dark Ones claimed her entirely? With each heartbeat, the whispers shifted, words coiling around her, twisting into familiar phrases. You're part of this now. They were right. This power plant held a secret, and she was now ensnared in it. But the thought, however terrifying, sharpened her focus. She could feel the remnants of the wrench in her palm, abandoned but not forgotten. She had to find it. It was more than a weapon, it was a lifeline. The shadows pulsed and surged, and she felt them brush against her skin like icy fingers, a chill that threatened to swallow her whole. They were closing in again, but she wouldn't let fear paralyze her. Just then, the fluorescent lights above flickered erratically, casting stark patches of light and dark all around her. In one fleeting moment of illumination, she spotted the wrench, glinting strangely in the gloom. Her breath quickened as she lunged for it, fumbling, grasping it tightly as she rose to her feet. Back! Sarah yelled, swinging the wrench with renewed ferocity. The shadowy figures hesitated, reforming under the blinding flash of brightness cutting through the darkness. Get away from my son! She took a step forward, and to her shock, the shadows hesitated, recoiling with a hissing rage. In that instant, she saw the outlines of faces twisted, lost souls with eyes filled with anguish. They were not just voids, they were victims, trapped just like her. No, 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 whispered echoes rang out, and it struck her like a blow. These were the faces she had seen in the photos, those lost souls forever imprisoned by this malevolent place. Their pain was palpable, and it threatened to consume her too. She hesitated, her heart torn. You're all trapped here, aren't you? She murmured, understanding dawning on her. They were not the monsters, they were the remnants of a tragedy that had unfolded long before her son and she had stepped foot inside, but she had to remind herself, Sam needed her. The specters swirled, whispering her name, and the room trembled with a new force. Hands reached out, grasping for something beyond the shadows. Every fiber of her being told her to turn and flee, but she had made a promise. Fear surged through her veins like ice, but she would not abandon her child. Let him go! She screamed, voice reverberating off the crumbling walls, growing stronger as she forged through the shadows. With every step, the wrench shone brighter, illuminating Sam's small frame in the chaos. Just as she thought she could reach him, a dark figure surged forward, a howl of ethereal sorrow echoing from the depths of the void. Sarah stumbled, but determination reignited her. She couldn't back down now. Her son's life hung in the balance. Suddenly, the ground lurched beneath her, and a cacophony of chaotic whispers crescendoed into a terrifying shriek. The walls of the room melted away, revealing an infinite expanse of darkness. Sarah's grip tightened on the wrench as the shadows coiled around her, threatening to drag her down. As panic rose within her, Sarah felt a pulsing energy, a warmth surging around her like a protective barrier. I want to let you take him. She shouted, feeling her own power awaken, but in that moment of illumination, another horrifying revelation struck her. If the shadows craved fear, what would happen if they discovered hers? And just as everything began to shift, the darkness broke open. Mommy! Sam cried, the world tilting as she struggled to break through the shadows that began to tear at her soul. In that dreadful instant, she understood, yielding to fear could change everything. Her heart sank as the whispers grew louder, join us. What had she awakened beneath the power plant, and how much longer could she hold out against the encroaching darkness? The shadows screamed with despair, and Sarah could feel them probing, twisting, tightening around her limbs. Each whisper cut deeper, clawing at her sanity. Join us, it's better. In the darkness they promised a release, a way to silence the fear, but their voices dripped with malice. No. Her voice broke the wall of sound, cutting through the oppressive tide. She regained her footing, feeling the cold iron of the wrench in her grip. The warmth that had flared around her dimmed, but it hadn't vanished. It was still there, a flicker of hope against an ocean of despair. She surged forward, her eyes darting to where Sam's voice had called out. The darkness shuddered, pushing against her like a storm. With each swing of the wrench, light pierced through the suffocating gloom, scattering the shadows like dust. She could see him, a small silhouette trapped in an ethereal web of blackness that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. "Sam!" she cried, pushing against the shadows that clawed at her mind. Each time she thought of him, a surge of power coursed through her veins, and the shadows shrieked as they recoiled, but there were so many, too many. Suddenly, a dark figure loomed ahead, its hollow eyes fixing on her with an unfathomable hunger. The air around it warped and pulsed like a living thing. It raised its arms, and the shadows thickened, twisting into a noose designed to drag her down, away from her son. "Stop!" Sarah yelled, her voice stronger now. She swung the wrench, connecting with the darkness that screamed and writhed, and where the metal struck, sparks of light exploded outward, illuminating the contours of the creature's twisted face. It wore the faces of the lost, those eternally trapped souls Susan had glimpsed earlier, screaming in agony. They were pushing through the confines of their torment, and in their release, she could feel their despair cold and gripping. "No more!" she yelled, channeling her pain into the iron tool. "Let my son go!" With each swing, she tore through the agony, forcing the shadows back like waves crashing against a rock. But for every step forward, the darkness retaliated, howling in protest. She felt it sting at the edges of her mind, each whisper a dagger. "Join us, you belong to us." It promised peace, it promised release from this chase, but at what cost? Then she saw him, Sam, just a few feet away, little hands reaching out, eyes wide with terror. His cries grew more frantic, each echo pulling at her heartstrings. Sarah lunged, making contact with the dark veil that enveloped him. "It's okay. I'm here." But a tremor rippled through the air, a wave of rage that knocked her off balance. The dark figure surged forward, the shadowed arms stretching toward her son. "No. Not him!" she screamed, but the veil of darkness tightened around her, pulling her back into its abyss. In that moment, Sarah felt her resolve shifting, and a fear she had never known bloomed in the pit of her stomach. What if giving in was the only way to save them both? What if she embraced the power the night promised? A vision flickered in her mind, a family reunited, love without pain or terror. Yet the price was steep. Would she risk everything to pull Sam from the dark? Gritting her teeth, Sarah cleared her mind just long enough to catch Sam's terrified gaze locked onto hers. "You can't leave me," he wailed, the shadows flickering dangerously close. "Together." She called back, not knowing if she could withstand it, but knowing she had to try. The darkness paused, a quiver rippling through the air. For a heartbeat, silence reigned as they stared at each other across the chasm of despair. But then the shadows thrashed violently, enraged by their unity. "Stay with me," she shouted. With every ounce of her strength, Sarah raised the wrench one last time, ready to face the storm head-on. But just before she struck, a whisper slithered into her mind, join us." The engulfing shadows closed in, and she shook, wrestling with the darkness from within. How strong was her will? What choice would she make when confronted with her deepest fear? The question hung heavy in the air as she prepared to hit back. The wrench hung in the air, trembling with the weight of Sarah's uncertainty. Shadows closed in, swirling like a tempest, each whisper clawing at her resolve. Join us. They were seductive, wrapping her consciousness in promises of relief, of freedom from the relentless torments surrounding her. But she had one thought, a singular flame of clarity that burned frantically in the chaos. "Sam!" With a fierce scream, she swung her wrench, the metal slicing through the gloom like a beacon of light. It connected with the dark figure, the relentless shadows shrieking as they recoiled. But the creature only laughed, a sound hollow and terrible, echoing in her very bones. "No escape," it taunted, eyes swirling like a vortex, pulling her into waves of despair. "You'll join us soon." "Never." She shouted, but her voice quivered, doubt creeping in. Was she fighting for her son, or herself? The shadows advanced, thickening, consuming the light she had brought. Every heartbeat felt like a countdown, panic suffusing her body. "Sarah!" Sam cried, his tiny hands now completely trapped. The darkness tightened around him, a merciless grip. His face was pure terror, a reflection of her own fear, but even deeper helplessness. "Let him go!" she screamed. With a primal yell, she swung again, feeling the wrench bite against the blackened mass. It exploded with light, illuminating ghostly faces for a mere second before they dissolved into nothingness, swallowed back into the abyss, but every swing only seemed to attract the darkness. It returned with vengeance, howling with fury. The air thickened, and whispers morphed into desperate pleas, join us, it's so much easier." They slithered into her thoughts, wrapping around her like a thick fog. Each voice urged her to surrender. The warmth in her chest flickered, threatening to extinguish, closer with every slick tendril. Her grip weakened, and she stumbled back. Panic surged, her breath coming in short gasps, and the fears of her past crept in, ghosting through her consciousness like specters from a nightmare. The loss of her husband, the pain of grief was giving in truly the answer. "Mom! Please!" Sam's voice was a lifeline, slicing through the darkness. His eyes glimmered pools of desperation that anchored her. She steeled herself, fighting against the chaos as a mother's love ignited a new strength deep within her. "Together!" She cried out again, the word booming through the shadowed air. The dark figure lurched, anger rippling through its form. But she felt something shift, a tentative understanding passing between them. "Stay strong, Sam!" she yelled, determination flooding her veins. And then, something unexpected happened. The wrench pulsed in her hand, resonating with a power she never knew existed. The shadows quaked, shrieking in unison as if sensing the shift. They twisted and turned, but she pressed forward, driven by the love surging through her like a blue flame. With one last surge of will, she struck down into the depths surrounding Sam. Light erupted. But then there was silence, the kind of heavy silence that screamed more than any wail. "I'm still here," came a faint voice, trembling. It was not Sam. The darkness swirled again, revealing a figure, a woman with hollow eyes carved from night itself, the very essence of longing. "Join me," the figure echoed, trembling hands stretching toward Sarah, the shadows crawling hungrily back toward her, desperate for her warmth. The air felt electric with a new kind of desperation. "Sam!" Her heart pounded as she turned. The light flickered, extinguishing the voice of the woman. But the shadows were still looming, hungry for her next move. She had a choice, the wrench poised in one hand, Sam's terrified voice pleading in the darkness. What darkness would she choose, that of the shadows or the warmth of the ethereal light? The question held her in suspense, the shadows waiting, watching for her next breath. The true fight was just beginning. The silence hung like a weight, heavy and suffocating. Each heartbeat sounded like thunder in her ears. Sarah felt the shadows lunging at her, their grasp clawing at her legs, as if they were alive, eager to pull her into the depths of despair. "Sam!" she yelled again, desperation bleeding into her voice. But he was hidden, shrouded in the murkiness that had twisted between them. The dark figure loomed, blocking her sight, grinning with an insidious hunger. "Join us," it whispered, a sickly sweet promise that caressed her mind. The words slithered deeper, snagging on her fears like fishing hooks. Memories cascaded in waves, her husband's face, the love that turned into shadows of grief. "It's so easy to let go, no." She shook her head forcefully, trying to clear the fog. The wrench felt heavier, dragging her down, but she tightened her grip. "I refuse," she choked out, and with it, her resolve sparked back to life. The shadows recoiled as she swung the wrench one more time, a guttural cry escaping her lips. The darkness parted briefly, revealing Sam's terrified face. For a heartbeat, clarity shot through her, illuminating everything she fought for. "Stay with me," she pleaded, her voice raw. She felt an electric pulse surge back through her veins, a lifeline sparked by his presence. The darkness hissed, angry and twisting, desperate not to lose its grip. "Mom!" Sam cried, his voice cracking, fear enveloping him. With each scream, he unleashed a stir of strength within her that bolstered her courage. She surged forward, charging toward the dark figure, wrench raised high, anger and love fueling her every move, but the shadows weren't done. They lashed out, coiling around her limbs, yanking her back. She stumbled, skin prickling with icy dread. "Join us, it's so much easier," the shadows wailed, as if to drown out her thoughts, pulling her deeper into the abyss. The woman's haunting face reappeared, more vivid than before. "You don't know the joy of being free. You're doomed to suffer alone." Her eyes bore into Sarah's, voids that swallowed her spirit, taunting her with visions of despair. Sarah fought against it. "I am not alone," she roared, seeking the warmth of her son's love. She could feel it, a warmth blooming inside her, pushing back against the cold. For every step she took, she channeled her love into the wrench. It pulsed brighter, the metal glowing with an unearthly light that pushed back the shadows inch by weary inch. "Mom, please." Sam's voice cracked, the sound echoing louder in the chaos. The shadows thrashed, thrumming with frustration, screeching as the light intensified and began to burn away their form. Then she saw it, a flicker of light shining deeper within the dark, a silhouette of Sam emerging as if he had been saved from the grip of the relentless grasp. Her heart soared. "Sam!" She lunged, her voice breaking as she reached out for him, but the shadows swerved, refusing to let him go. "No!" Panic swallowed her, breath hitching as more darkness surged. The banning clutches tightened around her neck, squeezing the air from her lungs. She writhed, wrestling against the constriction, and with one final swing of the wrench, she let out a primal scream, her voice melding with the sound of the wrench crashing against the darkness. Light shot forth like a comet, scattering specters and lighting up the suffocating void. But as the darkness fell back, a new sound came, a low rumble echoing from deep within the shadows. An ominous threat hung in the air. "You think this is the end?" The voice of the figure rasped, now laced with fury. "You'll never escape, you will always be ours." The shadows swirled, morphing again into a tempest, a roiling mass beckoning for her surrender once more. Sarah's heart raced as she tightened her grip on the wrench, determination igniting her spirit. "I will not let you take him." But beneath the surge of hope, a terrible thought crept in. The darkness had shifted. What if Sam was lost forever, just out of reach? "Together," she whispered, knowing that she had to find a way. The shadows tightened their hold as Sarah prepared for a fight, the true battle only a breath away from erupting once more. What horrors lay ahead? What depths would she have to plunge into to finally save her son? A swirling tempest of darkness closed in, its weight almost suffocating. The wrench pulsed like a heartbeat in her hand, an iron lifeline amidst a sea of despair. Sarah's breath came in quick gasps, panic surging with each rabid hissing of the shadows. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, slicing through her resolve like icy blades. "You cannot resist. You are one of us, shut up." She screamed, her voice gravelly, raw with defiance. Once more, she drew upon the fierce light inside her, a shimmering memory of Sam's smile, the warmth of his tiny hand in hers. But as the visions flooded in, doubt nudged her spirit. What if her son was already swept away? Just then, she spotted a faint flicker in the darkness, the outline of Sam barely visible, struggling against the encroaching dark. "Mom!" Sam's voice was a fragile thread, trembling with fear that made her heart ache. "Just hold on," she cried, her voice straining. She had to believe he was close. Fighting back the shadows, she took a shaky step forward. The shadows shrieked, angry that she dared challenge them. The ground trembled beneath her feet as the air thickened, the atmosphere crackling with palpable fear. "Your hope is futile, Sarah," the dark figure sneered, rising again in a serpentine fashion. You cannot win. You think of love, but it only leads to weakness. No. She yelled, feeling something crack inside her. Love was not a weakness, it was a weapon. With a fierce roar, she swung the wrench, its light flashing bright enough to illuminate the writhing shadows. For a split second, a sliver of hope pierced through the chaos. Shadows flinched, recoiling from the radiant glow. But that hope twisted as the shadows screamed, "Join us. Embrace eternal freedom." Sarah pressed on, fighting against the tug of despair. "I'm strong because of my love," she shouted defiantly. The wrench trembled in her grip, the material sheathing around it resonating with her extraordinary conviction. But Sam was fading, caught in a dark swirl that threatened to consume him entirely. She couldn't lose him. The thought wrestled with her panic, pushing her toward the brink. With renewed fury, she swung again, every swing a gust pushing against the relentless tide of shadow. Light flared, illuminating grotesque faces and anguished screams twisted into the dark. Through the chaos, a figure darted past, a shadowy shape that crackled like dry leaves blown in the wind. There, something sparkled, a glint of silver among the blackened debris. "Mom, help!" Sam's voice rose above the cacophony, desperation clawing at her heart. In that instant, everything froze. Sarah felt time slow as she caught a glimpse of a dagger-shaped object lying within reach. The dagger resonated, its metal vibrating with the pulse of the light she summoned, yet the shadows thrashed violently, threatening to drag her back into the void. "Get it!" she yelled at herself, forcing the words through clenched teeth. She swung the wrench one last time, shattering the encroaching darkness. Urgency fueled her as she lunged for the dagger, fingers just grazing its cold surface. As she grasped it, an electric surge shot through her, power surged through her fingers. The shadows recoiled, letting go of Sam, if only for a moment. Eyes wide with terror, he stumbled toward her. "Mom!" But before she could call out again, the shadows writhed, surging back toward their prey, more furious than ever. "Foolish girl!" The dark figure spat as the shadows twisted around her limbs, constricting her like a constrictor ready to suffocate its prey. "You think you can save him?" Terror clawed at her throat as she struggled against the encroaching darkness, fear clawing at her with icy talons. The dagger felt heavy in her palms, pulsating with potential. Could it truly defeat them? But in that fleeting moment, she clung to the last ounce of faith. For Sam. She breathed, ready to wield the light and strike against the madness clawing at her sanity. Would it be enough to free them both, or would they be swallowed forever by the dark? The shadows enveloped her tighter, cold tendrils wrapping around her like predatory vines. The dagger pulsed with an energy that felt alien and powerful, a stark contrast to the fear suffocating her. With each panicked breath, she felt the darkness trying to pry her resolve apart, one splinter at a time. "Mom!" Sam's voice was a lifeline in the chaos, but Sarah felt the shadows tugging at him again, trying to pull him back into their fold. The desperation in his cry ignited a reckless fire within her and she forced herself to focus. She raised the dagger, the silver blade reflecting her trembling figure. With a guttural scream, she plunged it toward the dark figure hovering just beyond her reach. The shadows bit and gnawed at her, but she wouldn't yield. "Stay back," she shouted, thrusting the dagger toward the lashing tendrils. The blade made contact, and a searing light erupted from the point of contact, splintering the darkness. The dark figure shrieked, a sound like nails scraping against glass. But the shadows lurked still, flickering and regrouping, rising from the ground like a dark tide ready to reclaim what was lost. "You cannot fight us, Sarah. We are eternal." The air quaked around her, the whispers climbing in volume, merging into a ghastly chorus. "Give and join us, embrace the dark." It was an insidious lullaby, clawing at her sanity. A cold sweat dripped down her back, and she staggered, fighting dizziness. Suddenly, she caught a glimpse of Sam, eyes wide with fear, flailing against the dark barrier closing in on him. "Mom! Help! Sam!" The cry tore from her throat, raw and primal. She focused solely on him, heart hammering in her chest. If the dagger could push back the shadows for even a moment, maybe it could free him. Setting her jaw, she flung herself toward him, wielding the dagger like a beacon of hope. "Get behind me!" she yelled, realizing she had to shield him, at any cost. The gleaming silver sparked with energy, and for the first time, Sarah understood its purpose. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a conduit of her love. As she swung it with all her strength, the shadows recoiled, screeching in defiance. Each slice of the blade sent ripples of light through the darkness, turning fear into fire. "We will not succumb to you," she roared, the echo of her defiance reverberating against the scraping shadows. The ground beneath her began to tremble, fissures opening like dark mouths hungry for despair. She could feel the shift in the atmosphere, the heavy weight of terror lightening ever so slightly, as if the darkness realized it was losing its grip. "Mom, please." Sam's cries broke through the darkness, now filled with a spark of hope. The shadows hesitated, shifting restlessly, uncertain, but just then, she felt a strange warmth wash over her. Sarah wasn't alone in this fight. An unseen force swelled, the memories of happy moments with Sam conjuring a barrier of luminescence around them. Love surged through her, intensifying the dagger's light. "Together!" she shouted, looking into Sam's vibrant eyes. "On 3. 1. They stood firm against the shadows. 2. She felt every ounce of dread attempting to wring them apart. 3. She thrust the dagger into the dark mass, engulfing Sam's figure in a blinding wave of radiant energy, but as the darkness roared and lunged, thrashing wildly against the light, Sarah realized something terrifying. The illusion of victory was just that, an illusion. As the shadows writhed, a chilling voice echoed in her mind, whispering, "You think you can save him?" What she didn't know was that the true horror awaited, lurking behind the veil of darkness, ready to unveil itself. Would their moment of victory plunge them into even deeper despair? The shadows twisted into monstrous forms and knew her name. The shadows convulsed, their twisted forms distorting into wretched parodies of existence. Sarah's breath came in sharp gasps, her heart pounding like thunder in her ears. She could feel their malignant hunger, a desperate need to consume her hope. And yet, she refused to falter. With the dagger glowing in her grip, she forced herself to remain focused, to channel every ounce of love she felt for Sam into that blade. "Together, Sam," she shouted, her voice a fierce promise that cut through the swirling din. "On 3. 1. She felt the power swell within her, connectivity igniting a spark of strength. 2. She caught a glimpse of her son's trusting eyes, so full of fear yet tinged with hope. 3. Now. With a terrifying cry, she lunged forward, the dagger slicing through the thick, oppressive darkness. The light erupted from the point of contact, expanding violently and shattering the shadows like glass. The dark figure screamed an ear-piercing wail that pierced the air, rippling out as the darkness hissed, recoiling in utter fear. Even the shadows couldn't withstand the force of pure love. With every pang of the wedge they had driven into her heart, the dagger pulsed brighter, illuminating the hidden faces of the lost souls. "Sarah," came the echo of their suffering, a twisted symphony, but there was also a flicker of simmering recognition. They were more than mere victims, they were guardians, whispering strength into her. In that moment, understanding dawned, they were relying on her, just as she relied on them. With determination renewed, Sarah pressed on. She swung the dagger again and again, each strike a heartbeat in the war against despair. Light poured forth, illuminating the darkness, scattering the shadows like ashes in the wind. Each echo of her blade was met with shrieks, a cacophony of desperation clashing against the fire of her courage. Then suddenly, everything stilled. A hushed silence blanketed the air, as if holding its breath. The swirling mass that once threatened to consume her, now lay fractured and diminished, the chiaroscuro of dark and light dancing uncertainly. "Mommy!" Sam cried, his small frame emerging from the shadows, taking hesitant steps towards her. She could hardly breathe, not out of fear, but from sheer relief. "Mom!" With a surge of adrenaline, Sarah rushed to him, scooping him into her arms, wrapping him tightly as if he might disappear again. "I've got you, baby. I'm here." But the fight wasn't over. The dark figure began to reform. The air was thick with malice as it loomed, more grotesque than before. "You cannot win this fight. You'll always belong to the darkness." "No!" Sarah yelled, her voice ringing with defiance. "We break this cycle today." She lifted the dagger high, summoning the energies of lost souls, amplifying her strength. Love, she realized, was her greatest weapon. She had faced this fear, this entity, not just for herself, but for every life consumed by the shadows before. And this time, she wasn't alone. The souls from the photographs, the mothers, the fathers, the children lost in despair moved like a tide behind her. Their energy surged with her resolve, a chorus of voices rising. They could finally be free, fragments of souls drifting back to the light. "Join us." They rallied around her, pushing unison into her tired limbs. "Love conquers all." The dark figure shuddered and twisted as the light intensified, forcing shadows to morph and tear. Everything trembled, and energy crackled around Sarah, mixing with the echoes of those trapped souls. "Now, together," she shouted, turning to Sam, his face alight with fierce determination matching her own. She plunged the dagger deep into the heart of the writhing mass, her fears and memories entwined with the drive to save not just their bond, but all lost connections. The light erupted, fierce and blinding, filling every corner, shattering the darkness with luminous ferocity. Shadows screamed and peeled away, yielding to love's relentless blaze, revealing nothing but the remnants of grief behind them. And just as the darkness waned, a final whisper escaped into silence, fading like smoke in the wind. Breathless, Sarah stormed through the remnants, clutching Sam close. They were free. Little pieces of the dark lifted from the ground like shadows no longer owned. "This is our home, Sam," she whispered, embracing him tightly. "It's safe now." The cool night breeze stroked their faces as reality settled back around them, reassuring and comforting. Even though the scars would linger, Maplewood dawned anew, an awakening, a rebirth. The night was forever changed. Standing in the remnants of the power plant that once held her fear, she and Sam emerged into the soft light of dawn, ready to mend what was broken, and to begin again. And at that moment, they turned to face the rising sun, a promise of hope, tenderness, and a future unshackled. As the new day dawned, a firm hope blossomed, one guided by love and an unwavering bond, a reminder that no darkness could ever claim them again. Now's your chance to be a part of this community. You need to subscribe immediately to keep up with our wild, exclusive stories and don't miss a single twist. Smash that like button now to help us feed the algorithm, and flood the comments section with your reactions. Let us hear your theories on Sarah and Sam's journey. And hey, don't wait even one more second, go ahead and share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this gripping conclusion. Your support means the world to us. Only true fans get how important it is.